I noticed just in the last few weeks there's been a lot of promotion for the new Netflix show, the new series of the Netflix show, The Crown. And I've never watched it. Maybe I will get round to watching it one day. But it just reminds me of this fascination that we have as human beings with royalty, maybe more so in our country than others, but there's still that desire for people to see what they get up to, the kings and the queens and the princes and the princesses, and there's just that sense of interest in what it means to be a king or a queen, even though maybe there's not as much power as there used to be. And we're still fascinated with all the old kings and queens. Anything about the Tudors generates a lot of interest. So there's something in us really that thinks about leaders and royalty and what that means. And in a way, that's what this feast that we're celebrating today, the feast, the solemnity of Christ the King, the last Sunday of the year, in the church's year before we move into Advent, it's Christ the King. That feast acknowledges that because we're thinking all the time about kings and queens, and perhaps looking at the world and seeing bad examples of that, of people dominating and abusing their power, this solemnity reminds us of what it really means to say someone is a king or a queen. And who is our king and queen? That's the question that is asked. Whom do we serve? Whom do we look to when we think about who is the king of the universe? And of course, it's Jesus Christ, the King. It's a reminder to us that no matter what oppressive regime we may be undergoing, lots of people in the world, that they really suffer at the hands of oppressive leaders and dictators and kings. And this gives them hope to know that that's temporary. That's just to do with worldly power. The true king, the king whom we look to and serve and recognize, is Jesus Christ. He is King of the universe. He created the universe. He continues to rule. His kingdom is both now and outside of time. It's already but not yet. That's what the phrase we learn in theology. Already but not yet. His kingdom is here amongst us, but it's not of this earth either. That's the great hope we have, and we look to Jesus. We know that he in the end is in control. He is the one whom we should look to in our lives, who rules us, but not in a bad way, not in the way that we have come to know through our human leaders, but through his great example. And what is that example that he gives us? How does he show us what it means to be a true king? He does it in great service. He goes around healing people. He goes around helping people and listening and becoming part of their lives and making them feel valued. That was his earthly ministry. And then, of course, the great act of love that we see on the cross. Jesus dying on the cross, his suffering, his death. And it doesn't end with the death. It then is his resurrection, that whole event, that saving event in service to us. He shows how much he loves us, how he is king by going before us, by loving us, by dying for us, by rising for us, and he continues to serve us. We have that wonderful hymn that reminds us of that. This is our God, the servant king. So that means if Jesus has shown us what it means to be a true king by serving people, by sacrificing himself for people, then we too share in that, because in our baptism, just been talking with some of the children this week about baptism. In our baptism, when we're anointed with the oil of chrism, that's sealing us, it's confirming us our baptism, but it's a sign that symbolises the role of Jesus as priest, prophet and king. So when we're anointed, what we're doing then, and what I say to the families, because it's always a nice thing and you get the awe factor, is that we're anointing the children and adults as princes and princesses of the church. We anoint ourselves, we anoint the child or the adult on the crown of the head, to go back to the title of that Netflix show, The Crown. we're acknowledging that we're sharing in the royalty of Jesus in his kingship. And we don't share in that royalty by going around using others, dominating others, and not loving others by abusing them or anything like that. We share in Jesus' kingship by serving others, by loving others. So, this Solemnity of Christ the King asks us a question today. If we want to share in the royalty of Jesus and the kingship of Jesus and live out the vocation that we have from our baptism, that calling that we had at baptism when we were anointed with the oil of chrism, then we can look around ourselves and instead of saying, who can get me to the point where I want to be and who can I use for my own ends, we should be asking the question rather, whom can I serve? Who am I going to be a king or a queen to today? Who am I going to serve? And as we're approaching Advent and Christmas, a great way of doing that is to get involved in charitable projects. In our parish, we're going to promote the Caritas campaigns where we can do a reverse Advent calendar by bringing non-perishable food items to church, and they'll be distributed at the Lally Centre in the north of Manchester, at Cornerstone, our own local charity for the homeless, and all our local food banks as well. We'll be sharing our wealth in that way, or we can donate money online. That's an easy way, in a way, of serving our neighbour, becoming kings and queens to our neighbour. Another way is just look around the people that we live with and just make one little small act of kindness or generosity each day, even if it means not flying off the handle just by counting to 10. That is an easy way of being like Jesus, being the light of Christ for people and imitating him in his kingship. He died for us, he rose for us, he serves us continually. That's what we're called to do today as well. Not only today on the Feast of Christ the King, but throughout our lives, especially as we approach the great feast of Christmas.